Namaste, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by the Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board on the occasion of World Environment Day. A special welcome to all those who have joined us on the Facebook live stream. With the corona pandemic, nature has finally shown us that she will no longer suffer and forgive all the indignities we humans heap upon her. As we prepare with cautious optimism to emerge from the pandemic, there is a sudden realization that the opportunity COVID brings is that previous perspectives on what tourism is may no longer be appropriate. Does the answer lie in adopting a holistic approach to the well-being of the entire ecotourism or tourism ecosystem? Can regenerative tourism offer us a smarter, greener, less crowded post-vaccine return to tourism? Can we shift tourism from being extractive in nature to regenerative in order to generate more value that's social, cultural, biophysical, and financial? With tourism contributing 10% to local GDP and employment, how can tourism as a business evolve to become a panacea and heal the damage caused by this pandemic? To answer these questions and more, we have a panel of very eminent speakers. I am proud to present at first Mr. Shiv Shekhar Shukla, who joined the Indian Administrative Services in 1994, and he is presently Principal Secretary, Tourism, Culture and Public Relations, Government of Madhya Pradesh. He is also Managing Director, Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board. He has an MTech in Nuclear Engineering from IIT Kanpur and has served in several important positions in areas that are particularly relevant to today's discussion: rural development, livelihood generation, lake conservation, mining department, food grain storage, and of course, tourism, culture, and heritage conservation. Mr. Shukla has visited various countries such as Japan, Sweden, Argentina, China, and South Africa to learn more about conservation practices in these places. And he is a recipient of several awards, such as Stockholm Partnership Award for Lake Conservation, Manthan Award for Digital Empowerment. And under his leadership, Ujjain won Best District Award from the Government of India for rehabilitation of differently abled people. Sir, thank you for giving us this opportunity, and we welcome you to this panel and look forward to hearing your views.
Thank you very much, Vinitaji. First of all, let me compliment everyone on World Environment Day. The theme and the timings of today's webinar couldn't have been more relevant. As all of us understand that we are sitting right in the midst of a pandemic. And while the jury is out that whether the pandemic is caused due to a leaked man-made virus from Wuhan laboratory, or it is just because of a stray virus jumping from an animal to human being. But the fact remains that we are witnessing a very transformative age, and where we find that the disease landscape is totally changing, with more than 75% of the new diseases having zoonotic origin. We also understand that global warming and the climate change, etc., used to be some theoretical words so far. But now the impact of climate change is very much discernible in the form of receding glaciers or vanishing biodiversity, wilderness, irregular and erratic climatic conditions, and frequent cyclones, which we witness every day. So it's no more fire in some remote jungle. The fire has come right on our doorstep, and all of us are feeling the heat. And if we try to connect dots, this pandemic is not the only one which is happening right now. We have witnessed more than 6 such kind of wide-scale epidemics in the last 20 years, starting from avian flu to SARS, MERS, Ebola, Zika, and now this COVID-19, and what next we don't know. Today, I feel that we are certain of only one thing, and that is uncertainty. Now, this relevance of World Environment Day with respect to tourism sector is much more pronounced because of the fact that tourism and travel is one of the major activities which not only contributes to the GDP of a country, but also it leads to a lot of carbon emissions. Transportation is the fifth most polluting industry in the world. So having known all these factors, we are now at crossroads. On one hand, in this tourism sector, our aim is to increase the mobility, to bring out people, to take them to unfathomed depths, to take them to unknown places, let them explore the new world. On the other hand, this pandemic dictates that everyone should stay home. So it's a dichotomy which we are caught in. Of course, the whole world is caught in this dichotomy, but we are the worst affected out of this whole chaos. So now the question is that whether we can stop travel and tourism, is it practical? So the obvious answer is that we cannot do away with travel and tourism. These are the necessities of the modern world. And more so because basically we are nomads by nature. Of course, settled cultivation has been there just for the last 10,000 years. Before, for billions of years since human being came into existence, we have been nomadic in nature. So to change our behavior overnight doesn't seem to be a possibility. On the other hand, travel and tourism is directly related to the economy of the country. For India, it contributes more than 7% of the GDP. For other developed economies of G20 countries, it contributes 10 to 15% of GDP. It also creates a huge number of jobs. More than 100 million jobs are created world over because of this sector. And more than half of the jobs created, they go to the women folk. It also leads to women empowerment. So now the question is, what can be done? On one hand, we need to increase the footfalls being in the tourism and travel sector. But on the other hand, this pandemic has given an opportunity to reflect back, to take this as an alarm and to see the writing on the wall. And we have got to mend our ways. We have to see that how we reduce the carbon footprints while increasing the footfall. We also need to move to the new ways of thinking, new ways of traveling. We need to move to responsible tourism, or else the tourism becomes responsible for whatever goes wrong. We need to leverage technology. We need to change our behavior partly. For example, today we are all connected. People sitting in different parts of the globe are connected. We are just a click away from each other. We have invented new ways of interaction. Virtual meeting has become norm of the day. So these are the new normals which we have to adjust to. And similarly, we need to incorporate certain philosophical changes when we talk about tourism and travel. Well, from Madhya Pradesh tourism, I can say that we have now started keeping wellness and mindful tourism in the core of our tourism philosophy. We have created a vertical on responsible tourism in the tourism board, which is going to be responsible for seeing that we have more and more of sustainable tourism packages rolled out, give people more options where the tourism happens, but it is much safer for themselves and for the society. We are thrusting on rural homestays. We are creating farm stays. We are thrusting on agricultural tourism so that people can have authentic experience of rustic and local art and culture, cuisine, craft, and the ways of sustainable living. Our villages are the best examples of sustainable living. These have been there for thousands of years. So the Madhya Pradesh tourism is aiming to create a different kind of ecosystem where, looking at the current situation, how do we readjust to the new realities? We are moving towards a direction where tourism becomes more inclusive by involving the communities, more sustainable, and more resilient. We today have an array of eminent thought leaders who are here to enlighten us more, because they are the subject experts, domain experts. And I'm very sure out of this webinar, we're going to get some very good pointers for the way forward. Thank you very much for being here today as a speaker, and for all the participants who are listening to us. I'm sure this initiative of Madhya Pradesh Tourism will go a long way in creating a different ecosystem in the field of tourism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your opening remarks. Now, if I may introduce Dr. Harold Goodwin, who has joined us from the UK. He has worked on 4 continents with local communities, their governments, and inbound and outbound tourism industry. He is Professor Emeritus at the Manchester Metropolitan University, Managing Director of Responsible Tourism Partnership, and advisor to the World Travel Market on its Responsible Tourism Program at WTM London, which attracts 4,000 destinations each year. Dr. Goodwin is much sought after as a speaker, and we are delighted with his presence on World Environment Day. Dr. Goodwin, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this panel. I'm very excited by what's happening in Madhya Pradesh and hope very, very much to see its success over the next few years. What I wanted to say this morning was that it was back in 1972 that the Club of Rome report was published. And I was at university studying politics, and it didn't come up at all in the formal curriculum, but it did make a splash in the Sunday Times. And I still have a copy of the Club of Rome report from 1972. I was quite young then, I was 20, and I thought we'll never make that mistake. We won't be so foolish as a species to go on over-consuming the natural environment. But unfortunately, we have. All the recent reports looking at what's happened since 1972 indicate that those forecasts were correct. And now, of course, we're in a situation where we hear from the scientists about the danger of 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees and what that will mean for hundreds of millions of people around the world. And we all think, oh, we'll never let that happen. But my fear is that we will let it happen. In 2002, frustrated by people talking about sustainability all the time and using sustainable often to mean little more than they thought they would still be in business next year, we launched the Responsible Tourism Declaration in Cape Town with the South African government alongside the World Summit on Sustainable Development. And what was interesting about that process was the enthusiasm with which people recognized the need for a change. The basic change that we wanted to see was that rather than just talk about sustainability or ecotourism or whatever kind of tourism it was, that people would take responsibility to make the change. And that's still the challenge. People talk about ecotourism as though it's going to save the world, and some of it will, but most of it is just greenwashing. So one of the big challenges, I think, for any state or city or nation which wants to adopt a progressive, solid approach is to try and drive out the greenwashing, because there's so much of it in our industry. We're right with it. Now, I've had the privilege, because I've chaired the Responsible Tourism Awards since we launched them in 2004, of seeing literally hundreds of businesses and destinations which are demonstrably making a difference. Many of them, interestingly, in India. And India has become really now the main center for responsible tourism. With people, there are businesses all over India which have won the awards, and you can't win them without demonstrating what you've actually done. It's not enough just to have a marketing slogan. So where I think we're at now is that we need to recognize that we face three existential crises. There's climate change, and that's closely linked to the problems we have over biodiversity and extinction. And I think you're absolutely right in what you said, sir, that what we're seeing is nature striking back with the virus. And this will not be the last virus, and it will not be gone quickly. We're going to have to learn to live with these viruses, and that's a frightening thing. So climate change, biodiversity loss, and you also picked up on inclusion. And I think that's vital. The world has become massively more unequal since 1972. Things were bad then, they're worse now. And I walked around the churchyard. My office at home overlooks the local parish church. I walked around there a few days ago with the tree warden for the county of Kent, where I live. And we got to talking about what had happened in that churchyard over the last 800 years. And it's a beautiful place, full of very mature trees, some of them quite unusual trees. And I said, will this still be here in 100 years? And he said, yes, this will be here, but we might not be. And I think that's right. We talk about us damaging the world, and we are, but we will not destroy the earth. We will simply make it inhospitable for ourselves. And with that will come war and famine and disease. It really is time to make the change now. And the only thing we can do is every one of us to take responsibility and make the changes. Can I just say again, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. Wonderful to hear your opening remarks. I now move on to Mr. Steve Borgia, who can veritably be called the father of regenerative tourism in India. Mr. Borgia is the founder, chairman, and managing director of Indeco Group of Hotels, the only Indian hotel group to win the Distinguished Global Eco-Tourism Award. He's a pioneer of rural tourism in India, and he's also the founder member of Responsible Tourism Society of India. He has authored several books and has established many local museums in Tamil Nadu. The concept of Indeco hotels has been acknowledged by the Fortune magazine as the 6th best idea to save planet Earth. Mr. Borgia has received several awards, including the National Tourism Award for his pioneering work in promoting rural and sustainable tourism. Mr. Borgia, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this discussion. And can we have a few opening remarks from you, sir?
Thank you very much. I must compliment the Maharashtra Tourism Department to look at the word regenerative tourism more seriously. Probably you're the first state in this country to look at it with so much of importance, and rightly your state. I always believed there were two states in India. They should throng on regenerative tourism. One is Madhya Pradesh, and second is Tamil Nadu. Just yesterday, I was at a workshop where the Tourism Industrial Investment Corporation is seriously looking at how to invest monies in rural tourism. What a big transformation. This is what the pandemic has taught us. We did many things during the pandemic, many things, but all related to rural areas. We wanted to go away to rural area because we thought it was safe. We thought that food was safe, the people were safe, and the fresh air, and not much of possibility of being affected by the pandemic. Now, the hotels did many things. We did about 89 weddings during the last 3 months because the government permitted us to do 50 people weddings, and we became a wedding destination. We did many things, many things. We started growing fish in our swimming pool and sold about 2 tons of fish every month. We started planting vegetables and fruits every inch of the estate, generated a lot of vegetables. We got the local people involved more and more. We were able to supply vegetables for about 30 to 40 villages on a daily basis. So now, all this is going to become the norm. All these small time practices which we did for survival is going to become the norm. We were able to do what 100 staff were doing with about 25 staff. How beautiful. Then we brought back the rest to do farming, to do agriculture, to grow vegetables. So this is becoming the norm. That's one. Two, why I say India should look at this word regenerative tourism or regenerate in everything possible is because we have been very irresponsible. The word sustainability did not really make an impact. When we spoke about the ozone hole as a child, I thought it was something to do with Time magazine, so to do with America, nothing to do with India. I thought ozone hole is in America. This is what I thought when I was in school. Then came the word environment, the Rio Congress. By then I was grown and I used to work for the UN, so I was there at the Congress. So I got to understand. But still, environment was a very large word and sustainability was very far. In fact, I looked at sustainability in Indian context as the other side of spirituality. Go through every aspect of sustainability. It goes with our country from time immemorial, nothing new. Nothing new. It's the other side of spirituality. But this word regenerative is so important for this country because we were a very resourceful country, very rich country. What a mighty, beautiful country. We wrote in about 2,000 languages. We spoke 2,000. We wrote in about 50. We introduced airmail to the world. We had the first university in the world. Wow. Wow. Everybody came. The Mongols came, the Dutch came, the French came, the English came, the Chinese came. They all took so much. Still, we have so much to offer the world. So the word regenerative is of a very high context to this country. And I think this is where we should be traveling. And that's exactly what we should do. And I used to talk a lot about development and environment and rural development in the past. But in 1992, when I came back to India, I said I will stop talking and I will do. So for 1 year, I kept very quiet and I did. I went to the remotest villages, remotest, most dilapidated. People were hopeless. They didn't know how to move the next steps, stealing from anthills, stealing rice from anthills and making their food. Per capita income was 4.03 US dollars per family per month. Cost of one bottle of beer. In less than 15 years, their per capita income has moved to more than 840 US dollars. Multi sources of revenue has come in. No unemployment, no beggars. We, we generated a new mission, not because somebody said, it is not fair if you don't give back, if you don't offer to the local communities. No, here was a business partnership. We married the tourism concepts to local communities. They came in, they taught a tourist how to climb a coconut, gave him a certificate, and charged him $50 for teaching him how to climb coconut, taught him how to ride a bullock cart, charged him $100 for it, and gave him a license to ride a bullock cart, to drink a coconut without a plastic straw, with the palm leaf, charged him $10. So everything there was a charge. There was a connection directly between the tourist and the rural citizen. Period. You want to eat the best fish curry rice? Go to that particular house. That house was a menu card. House number so and so in that street served you fish curry rice. This house gave you vegetable rice. That house gave. So the menu card was strewn all over the village. The tourists got connected to the rural people. So this is We regenerated the whole concept of living, of lifestyle, of development. We taught them only one thing: go to the villages, start with what they know, do with what they have. That's it. The whole concept evolved. I'm talking about 1994. We have been widely talking about it to governments at national level, everywhere. UNEP tried to reproduce this model. Not much has moved except for about 5 to 8 very seasoned people. We formed the organization called ARTI, Association for Agri and Rural Tourism. We have not progressed much because India is one country where businesses grow, entrepreneurs pick up where there is money, passionate people like us, very few who get stuck to the business and develop it. Yes, I'm very honest. Even in rural tourism, we have made tons and tons of money. But fortunately for us, we have a mission statement. We don't export that money. We deploy that money in other areas, in other villages. That's why we have created museums. So this itself shows the amount of money that is there with the people. We have created more than 3-4 museums with the people. The people have helped us identify jobs. So there's a lot of possibility for partnership. What government has a role to play in terms of policy. Look at what Pandey is doing in Maharashtra. Look at what people are doing in the Northeast. Our Northeast can become the world's largest bed and breakfast facility if we don't allow the brands to go there. Let those children enjoy that infrastructure. What we do there is against human rights. The children hardly have 12 working days with their parents. The rest of the day, they are out of the home, out of the state, looking for working opportunities. So I believe regenerative tourism is a very composite word and that can set literally all anomalies in our country. I'm very specific to India. It can set right a lot of issues and put India where it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very enlightening words and wonderful to hear about your journey starting way back in 1992. Coming to a gentleman who you just spoke about, Mr. Pandurang Tawade, fourth generation farmer and first generation entrepreneur is how he would like to describe himself. He studied computer science and worked in hospitality for 20 years. In 2003, he felt a call to return to agriculture, and he decided on merging it with tourism to launch Agri-Tourism Development Corporation with a model center in Baramati. After running this center for 3 years, he took on training and skill development in agri-tourism for other farmers in Maharashtra. As of now, there are more than 650 farms in 300 villages having adopted this model of agri-tourism. Mr. Tawade has received several awards ranging from the National Tourism Award to World Responsible Tourism Gold Award. Sir, I welcome you to this discussion and could we hear some opening remarks from you? So if you could kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Madhya Pradesh Tourism. Shiv Shekhar Shukla sir, IS Principal Secretary, Tourism, Madhya Pradesh Government. And our guide in Responsible Tourism, Harold Goodwin sir, S.T. Borgia sir, and co-panelist and architect Sanjay Soni sir. I think first warm greetings to all of you on Environment Day. And this is the right timing. In cricket, they say that it is like 6 balls and 6 runs. So it is the right timing. Madhya Pradesh Tourism has come into the picture because we are celebrating 150th birthday celebration of Mahatma Gandhi ji. And he thought about Atmanirbhar Bharat. And today, all India, we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. And we farmers in our country have become Atmanirbhar in this pandemic situation because agriculture was the only sector which was resilient to this pandemic, and we farmers have actually done our way forward in keeping India alive. Saying this, because I think tourism today industry has been forced to stop, but not the agriculture. And in agriculture, today we are talking about Mahatma Gandhi's principle. What was his principle? His principles was self-sufficiency in food, self-sufficiency in labor, and his Gandhi's principles were development of a favorable production system in the agriculture, addressing the needs of the resource, and the needs of the resources. We are actually promoting the rural livelihood. And because he always says India lives in our villages, and that is why the road for the development should also go from the villages. That is, rural development will not happen without the inclusive growth of the rural youths, rural women, and the rural farmers. With this opening remarks, we will go further on how agritourism is helping farmers on a self-sufficiency in livelihood and the rural employment and the sustainable income.
Thank you so much for your words, sir. It's amazing to even hear that you have made a difference to 300 villages, and we welcome you to this panel once again. As I move on to Ali Rashid, who is a wildlife and wilderness expert, as it were. And these two things have been his passion ever since childhood. And this passion for wildlife inspired Ali to set up and run Rainy Pani Jungle Lodges, one of the finest wilderness lodges in India. Ali is a trained naturalist and ornithologist. His deep involvement with Satpura has been a motivation to protect and conserve wildlife in this landscape. He has been working closely on tiger conservation. And I also understand from having worked with Madhya Pradesh Tourism about how much he has done towards saving the Bara Singha, the hard ground swamp deer that is indigenous to Madhya Pradesh. Ali is also involved in leading wildlife expeditions, both in India and abroad. Ali, welcome to this panel, and could we hear some opening words from you, please?
Thank you, Vinita, and thank you, MP Tourism Board, for organizing this webinar, and it's a pleasure to be part of this distinguished panel. Just quickly to talk about, the theme of this year. Of course, it's a very relevant topic, regenerative tourism. It is, as we know, World Environment Day, and this year's theme itself is restoring ecosystem. So it's very, inspiring that our state, I am from Madhya Pradesh and from Bhopal, and proud that, Madhya Pradesh Tourism and the state government is taking initiatives, at least obviously action, as well as holding these sort of webinars where we can brainstorm and ideate about how to go forward. And no other state, I would say Madhya Pradesh is so rich in biodiversity, heritage. We have 6 tiger reserves, the most for any state. We have, multiple sanctuaries and a plethora of different habitats and landscapes. We have grasslands, forest, river ecosystem. We are the tiger state of the country, as well as the leopard state of the country as well. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and a lot of opportunity to reinvent certain models. Right now we are having most of our tourism in 3 to 4 tiger reserves. But I guess over time we could utilize many more areas, whether it's inside the PAs or outside or in sanctuaries, so that the whole benefit of tourism becomes more widespread. Over the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time in Satpura, and we've tried to develop a model which is slightly different. We work with the forest department closely, and apart from focusing more on the motorized ways of exploring, we thought it'd be a good and refreshing change to be a little more sustainable and eco-friendly by introducing walking safaris, camping expedition, which are all on foot again, canoeing safaris, on rivers, where actually the guides are ex-fishermen who have now got an opportunity to guide people on, canoe expedition. So we just kind of tried to offer something different and move away from the traditional tiger tourism as such. And it worked well. Initially, it was difficult to promote such a model. But now, whenever we get inquiries, people don't want to just do jeep. They always ask, is the water level high enough for us to do canoe trips? Is the weather good enough for us to do the camping program? So we've seen that change in the last 10 years. And moving beyond this model of tiger reserve, there's certain inspirational models. If you look at Maharashtra, they're doing the cocoon model under the Sanctuary Nature Foundation, where it's a community-owned, community-operated regeneration of farmland. So marginal farmers on the edge of forests who are not able to generate much revenue through agriculture have been made partners to become tourism operators and use their land to regenerate it into forest. So this has multiple benefits. They get a better livelihood. You can even bridge corridors like this. And even the homestay model, I think MP Tourism is doing it quite well, promoting it in a good way. And we can see models in Ladakh and Northeast India also, especially the example of the snow leopard, where community-based tourism has worked very well. Hemis National Park is a great example where the homeowners in that landscape were herders earlier, and they were in conflict with snow leopards because the snow leopards would come in and kill their livestock. But slowly through the snow leopard conservancy, the people got trained to actually become homestay owners, and slowly the dependence on livestock became less, and they started actually hosting trekkers and people who wanted to see snow leopards, and this way the snow leopard became their biggest asset, which helped in a conservation angle as well. So we can, going as we proceed in this webinar, I'm sure a lot of good ideas about regenerative tourism will come up, and it's a pleasure again to be part of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much. Personally, I would like to say I'm a great admirer of the work that you have done for Madhya Pradesh in terms of conservation. So I'm so excited and looking forward to see what you have to say as the discussion progresses. And now we move to the youngest speaker on this panel, Suyash Keshari. Welcome. Suyash,
Thank
just
you.
to say a few words about you. Suyash is
Sure.
a 25-year-old wildlife filmmaker, conservationist, and presenter. He quit his full-time job in Washington to follow his passion to become a wildlife presenter. Suyash has worked on several projects with WWF International, with Animal Planet as a live host, and he has been published in several publications, including the prestigious National Geographic. Most recently, we saw Safari with Suyash, made for WWF International, which is a real-life web series about a young person's life with tigers and conservation issues centered in the Bandhavgarh National Park. Suyash also leads wildlife safari and photography tours all across India and Africa. Suyash, I'm a great fan. I follow you across all social media platforms, and I'm so happy to have you here, especially because I think you would be the ideal person to tell us what your generation thinks about ecotourism, about regenerative tourism, or about tourism in general. So over to you for your opening remarks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I'm more excited to be here than So thank you for giving a young boy like me an opportunity, Mr. Shivshakar Shuklaji. Thank you so much, and all the panelists in MP Tourism. I'm born and brought up in MP. I'm born in Narsinghpur. I've lived in MP and Chhattisgarh most of my life, of course in Delhi and US as well. But for me, I always say, MP ajab hai, sabse gajab hai. Nothing like the home state for me. And that's where I knew that if I wanted to do something, it has to be related to MP and its forests. And especially today's World Environment Day, and since we're talking about tourism, MP's forests are one place where everyone, with the tiger capital of the world, as Mr. Rashid said, with the leopard capital of the world, and increasingly now we are also becoming the wildlife tourist destination and the wildlife tourist capital of the world. People are moving away from just thinking about going to just from India to Kenya, Tanzania, or South Africa. They are realizing that here in India, we have vast array of wildlife which no other country has. For me, where it all pans down is that I have a belief that what we can see, we can love, we will fight to protect. And that's what I try doing through my virtual series, my films, when I present in front of camera, because a lot of people tend to fear and misunderstand what they don't know or they haven't seen. So for someone who has not seen a tiger or even a snake in the forest, it's obviously going to be scary for them, which I respect 100%. But the minute I'm able to put myself out there for the viewers, then I can help them connect and show them that it's totally safe if you work with other professionals, if you are in a jeep, or if you're in a walking safari, you are with forest rangers and things like that. And MP has pioneered wildlife tourism. There's nothing better than MP parks. It's so well managed. And for me, it's all about connecting the younger generations, because you see there's a phenomena which is quite problematic. For example, I'm born in 1996. From 1996 to whatever 2021 right now, or whatever year I take it as, I have accepted the nature and the wildlife as it was for me. From 1996 to 2021, there are a lot of changes that have happened, and forest cover has decreased across many states. MP, thankfully, not so much, but also the population of animals has decreased. So every generation accepts a newer, more degraded version of the environment, of the forest, and then moves forward thinking that that's what we have to protect. So people younger to me will accept a more degraded version than me or my father or my grandfather had. And I think for me to connect the younger people, to show them, going to a club is amazing and fun, getting drunk with friends is amazing and fun, but there's a different kind of satisfaction when you are able to go into the wild and connect with yourself. We talk about everything such as being in front of the screen all the time, and we're all very disconnected. But it's good to disconnect with all of this, but then to go into the wild and reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your inner core being. And that's what I try doing through my films. That's why I try doing when people come on tours with me. My one and only single goal had been to bring wildlife to people like never before. And I wanted to do this from a young person's perspective. People from all over the world come to India, present on Indian wildlife. We have some wildlife presenters in India also, but they're a much older crowd, which is okay. But why can't an Indian do it, and why can't a young person do it in their own manner? I think that's what my goal is. My goal is to help those people who might think that going to forests or taking a wildlife vacation or going on a safari is just for the older crowd. I think it's for the younger crowd as well, especially MP's parks. It's so easy. They're quite reasonable as well. And I think Madhya Pradesh government has done a phenomenal job at it. And for me to be connected with my home state throughout with my work is incredibly important. I do want to mention one thing, because we were talking about tourism and eco-friendly. I think when we think about eco-tourism and sustainable tourism, we often miss the point that we also have to make sure that we are giving way to wildlife. There are multiple projects going on which are connecting different reserves in Madhya Pradesh. There are multiple projects that are creating underpasses for wildlife. So we must ensure that we are focusing on those kind of initiatives. And when it comes to tourism, we must always remember that we can try our best to go towards the options which are not only eco-tourism but eco-friendly tourism, and sustainable in a manner that you have a minimal impact on the environment and things around you. And this includes uplifting communities. This includes not disturbing animals. This includes making sure that you pay a fair amount to the locals. This also ensures that you do not litter around on all of those places. So with that, I'll leave it for more questions. I'm sure there'll be more conversations, but it's an absolute pleasure being here. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Suyash. Whoever said that youth and wisdom don't mix, well, they have it wrong in your case, at least. Okay, which brings us to the first question, which I'm putting to the panel. What has been the pandemic's rallying call to people working in the travel industry? And how can we bring in elements of sustainable tourism? Call it eco-friendly practices, guiding principles, whatever it is that you think works. So if I could start with Dr. Goodwin. Sir, over to you for your comments.
I'm interested to see what the change is, because I think there's going to be two pressures on businesses now. One will be to return to business as usual. There are a lot of people unemployed. There's a lot of people desperate to get their businesses up and running again, and they will struggle to get going again. On the other hand, there are people who've realized that it's time for a change. I think the big change that COVID has brought potentially to the travel and tourism industry is the understanding that there has to be a rebuilding of trust in travel and tourism, that people will expect more and more for the travel and tourism sector to take responsibility to look after the health and safety of the travelers. And that's going to be a repetitive learning experience. As we watch, for example, Portugal go in and out of being on the green list for UK travellers. This is not going to go away quickly, and it is going to bring a change of attitude, I think. But on the other hand, businesses will be desperate for business, and they will simply want to fill the hotels again. And we're seeing the airlines in the UK cutting prices simply to get the aircraft flying again with passengers. So I think whilst it creates a fertile ground to talk about responsibility and people doing what's necessary to improve tourism, it won't happen unless we all push for it. And I think there's a particular role for government at state and local level to push the industry to take a more responsible attitude. But we can't take it for granted. We have an opportunity to build something, but we will have to make the effort and take responsibility. Otherwise, people will say, as they've been saying for the last 50 years, somebody else will solve the problem. I can just go on doing what I do. And that isn't going to happen. It will only change if we change it. But we have to change it at scale. A few individual entrepreneurs won't do it. A few people not flying won't do it. We need to see change at scale. And that's what we haven't seen over the last 40 years.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. Mr. Borgia, can I bring you into the discussion now to hear what you have to say about what elements of sustainable tourism we could begin to kind of integrate into our everyday lives?
I very clearly see, Verita, the sustainable tourism aspect as one, and the regenerative.
Sir, I think you have muted yourself. Kindly unmute yourself, Mr. Borgia.
I'll do that.
Yes, thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think we need to look at the regenerative processes more seriously. And of course, the post-pandemic impact will have a very serious weightage on what we are trying to do. As far as people, the people in the travel, tourism, hospitality sector will redefine themselves. In a way, very selfishly, I'm happy because for the last 30, 35 years, we have been shouting from the rooftop on rural tourism. The Indian communities have not well responded. They always wanted to go to the nearby overseas market. But the overseas people responded, and therefore all these people survived. But now the time has come for us to look at it very seriously. I'm sure we'll redefine sustainability, we'll redefine responsibility, and we will all be practicing regenerative occupations in whatever we are doing. Forget tourism, in whatever we are doing. We are going to be a lot more responsible. Uh, for instance, India 2 years back, we needed a long way to go, either in terms of hygiene, in terms of sustainability, in terms of cost control, in terms of wastage. Now, I think these four elements will be taken very seriously. And we are all ready. Tourism is not going to be just Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, or beaches of Goa or temples of South India. No, there is going to be a lot of new avenues that are going to be created, and the tourist or the traveler is going to be very, very sustainable in his thinking, very, very responsible in his thinking. He's no more going to go into the crowds, no more going to go into high funda hotels. No, he wants to be with nature. So that is going to be the biggest learning, and it's going to be the biggest turnaround that we have done. And let's look forward for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bodja. Can I move on to Mr. Tavare? Sir, what has been your experience in these 300 villages where your agri-tourism model is currently underway? What has been the learning from the pandemic? So kindly unmute your mic, please. Thank you.
As I was talking about Mahatma Gandhiji, because his simple living and high thinking has always inspired millions of people all over the world. And that is why, henceforth, there will be no mass tourism. There will be, no authentic tourism. Sorry, there will be authentic tourism, no synthetic tourism experiences. And people will go to the small farms. People, like Borja said, people will not go to the mass tourism at all. Now, when they come to the villages, and the learning from our pandemic is, we also say to the farmers in Maharashtra that forget about infrastructure. People are not coming to see your infrastructure. People are coming to have the regenerative system of agriculture, because new crops, types of soils, irrigation methods, and a lot of things in agriculture every day, because agriculture is only the place where every day there is a regenerative experiences what we have. And that is why I think this pandemic has taught us that give authentic experience to the tourist and be simple in living, because the tourist is coming to see your life and the farmer's life and the agriculture and the village traditions and village culture. This is what the learning is.
That's a wonderful thought, to move away from synthetic tourism to authentic tourism. Beautifully put, sir. Moving on to Ali. Ali, what has been your experience at your resorts, in the forests that you are at? What has been your learning? What has been the key takeaway?
Yeah, so I think, the pandemic, whatever the causes of the pandemic are, there's still debate. But it's not just this pandemic, it's 6 or 7, as Mr. Shukla pointed out, in the last 10 years. And all are, caused because of, our closer interaction with, animals and wildlife. These are all zoonotic diseases. So it's not just tourism, but, I think people have to change, also rethink the way they are, living generally. But coming to tourism itself, as the two previous speakers, Mr. Tavare and Mr. Borgia, pointed out, that the authentic tourism will stand to benefit, whether it is regenerative tourism or rural tourism, or for that matter even wildlife tourism. People had a bigger demand for this. In the last, between the two waves, what we saw when it was safe to travel, people were wanting to come to smaller places which was spaced out. There was natural social distancing over here. Wilderness provided a safe place for people to experience, whether it was going to a village or going for safari. So that definitely in the long term, I think this sort of mass movement will reduce, and places that are providing rare experiences or authentic experiences will stand to benefit. I think in the long run, once things settle, hopefully we are quite uncertain now when things will settle, but we need to rethink in terms of our practices also. So the government will have a big role to play because I think we need to have a comprehensive criteria, at least a basic criteria. Right now in India, I think there are various organizations which are promoting good criteria. Many lodges, many operators, tour operators are members of that. But at a government level, we need to have, I think the Government of India Tourism Department is developing a national sustainability criteria, which will be good if it's enforced across the country. So that basic things like we talk about single-use plastics and waste management, single-use plastics shouldn't be something that only a few discerning lodges are doing. That should just be, the use of single-use plastic should just be not happening in, especially in these sort of wilderness or rural tourism areas. And we can again come up, after we come up with this criteria which everyone is following, come up with certain aspects which actually reward organizations which are following better practices. So these sort of changes will have to be done in the long run. And as Dr. Goodwin also pointed out, that scale will be most important. We are just having few, right now we are having spurts of organizations, operators doing very good jobs. But we need to have that across the board for us to have a sustainable overall operation of tourism.
True, Ali, very pertinent points made there. So Yash, if I can move over to you, what are your thoughts on this subject? How do you think we can bring about more sustainable tourism given the backdrop of the pandemic?
Sure. I think a large role and part, as a lot of the speakers say, rests on both the wildlife or nature tour providers, tourism providers, and the government combined together. I think the rallying cause for or from the pandemic has surely been that people are traveling much more to national parks and wildlife or nature destinations. For example, last year, I think the MP parks opened on June 14th or 15th. And I remember reaching Bandhavgarh on June 16th. And all the way from 17th to 31st, every single ticket in Bandhavgarh National Park was booked. Only one or two was remaining. And that's something to say when there are no foreign tourists coming. And many of the states still had lockdown. So it was most likely MP locals or people either coming from Delhi because Delhi had opened up, or Chhattisgarh because Chhattisgarh had opened up. So suddenly you saw that an influx of local tourism. So what's happening is a lot of this money that used to go abroad in spending, or a lot of this money that used to go into big resorts in, say, Goa or any of these hill destinations, are actually now coming in and funneling it towards the wildlife sector or the nature ecotourism sector, be it Pachmari, be it Bandhavgarh, be it Satpura, be it Kanha and Pench. And what is very important is that if it's not kept in check in terms of how the providers are functioning, all of these places can go for a toss. And there will be a huge amount of increase in garbage, especially the non-biodegradable waste. And I think it will be very important for government and industry to come together and put some regulations out that no burning of plastic, because a lot of places, including in Bandhavgarh, Kanha, and Pench, a lot of lodges actually burn their trash and the plastic. So if you go in November, December, January, you will be choked as if you are in Delhi, which shouldn't be the case. There should be proper waste management collection. And I think it's very easy to say it's only government's job, but it's also the wildlife tour providers, the nature tour providers, the hotels have to take it on themselves, and for tourists to demand and for the eco-friendly properties. Because we speak about ecotourism, but not ecotourism is not eco-friendly tourism. We have to talk about eco-friendly tourism because, for example, if a lodge caters to 1,000 guests a month or a year, and each of them use 2 plastic bottles, that's just 2,000 plastic bottles coming from one lodge. Most of these national parks have 80 lodges, 80, 90 lodges. And of course, they don't use 2 plastic bottles. They use 5, 10 a day per person usually. And I think that's something that really needs to take in perspective. And we're also seeing a lot of young people starting to travel now. And I think this young wave, which is a little more conscious about the environment and sustainability, though not all, mostly they are. I think they will start demanding it from the wildlife destinations as well.
Thank you, Suyash. Mr. Shivshekhar Shukla, sir, would you like to say something as closing remarks on this question before we move on to the next topic?
Speakers have already thrown light on the way forward, that how the tourism is going to take a new shape. From Madhya Pradesh side, I can only say, apart from rural tourism and other aspects of responsible tourism, we are also trying to diversify. Like Suyash also just mentioned, that too much of pressure on our national parks or sanctuaries would definitely not be in the long run in good taste. So we are trying to diversify. We are emphasizing on adventure tourism and trying to create very good camping sites, which are abundant in Madhya Pradesh. We are blessed with having a lot of natural bounty. So that is one thing. Then glamping, of course, glamorous camping for well-off people who would like to stay outdoors and enjoy the natural surroundings. Then, of course, cave and rock art tourism also we are trying to promote, because we are very rich when it comes to prehistoric rock paintings in Madhya Pradesh. These are littered all over the state. And then, of course, different kind of walking trails, circadian travel, which we are working with, where people give them a chance to detox themselves from the technology, away from everything, and as Suyash very rightly pointed out, to reconnect themselves with themselves. So these are the areas which we are trying to venture out as new models and new products of tourism, and would like to take the entire hospitality industry with us, so that we give viable and good alternatives to people who otherwise would go for only the traditional mode of traveling, which creates a lot of pressure on the ecosystem.
Thank you, sir. Since we have a good viewership at the moment, and before it tapers off, I'd like to put this question out to all of you about what we as travelers can do to make this world a better place. What are some small everyday tips that we can get from all of you who are specialists? What can we do to cut down our carbon footprint? Dr. Goodwin, if I can start with you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Could I just comment, though, on the conversation that's just taken place? I think we should be very of allowing mass tourism to start to happen in natural environments. It's been a major issue in the UK. It still is. As people come out of lockdown, they're desperate to get into rural areas, but the infrastructure to manage those people is not there. So we've got major problems with wild camping, with wild toileting, and with litter. And it's become a real problem in the UK. And to be honest, I think it will become a problem everywhere as people go into rural environments which are simply not equipped for mass tourism. But to come to the second question that you've asked, Benita, I think that we have to think really hard about how we travel. And clearly, we have a big campaign going on over aviation to try and encourage the industry to move to hydrogen, which is the only future for sustainable aviation. But as individuals, we can choose to fly less often. We can choose to fly direct. We can choose to fly in economy class. There's a whole series of things we can do about that. But the other point I want to make, and I think this does relate to COVID, a lot of us have learned during the pandemic to buy local. So, for example, the food economy where I live has grown massively, the local food economy. And you could apply exactly the same principles when you're away. To buy local makes an enormous difference to local communities. So buy local, don't litter, don't use single-use plastics. All of the things you might do at home, you can do there. And I think wherever you're traveling in the world, you can do the same thing. You may need to learn to do them because it will be done in a slightly different way. But it is extremely important, I think, to apply the same principles of a sustainable lifestyle when you are away as you would at home. But the big problem for travel and tourism is to take the carbon out of the fuel. And the problem is not aviation. The problem is the dirty fuel that aviation uses. Yeah, big change there.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. If I can pose that same question to Mr. Borgia. Sir, what are some recommendations from your end, which we can apply in our everyday lives and just be better travelers and leave the place better than we found it?
I think we have to majorly change. Even when pandemic hit us, the entire travel industry was talking about, oh, inbound is not going to happen for the next 2-3 years. Let's look at domestic. I mean, it's a selfish thought. Suddenly we started looking at domestic. We didn't want domestic because there was money in inbound. Now we say, okay, let's look at domestic. But we should not forget there is something called neighborhood. They will be the first ones to come to you. Neighborhood. It's a different section of the people altogether. I had people coming into the hotel, people who were living 10-kilometer radius came and checked into the hotel, and I welcomed them. First time. So there is a neighborhood. Then there is this very, very beautiful, the youth. I'm one person who believed and was very happy with the way the youth think, the way the youth apply. Then my own generation. I think the youth today, the young, are so responsible. They go to a place, they don't just look at, no. They see how responsible they can be in taking care of the earth. For them, whether it is sustainability, responsibility, regenerative tourism, no. They just want to care for the earth and care for all these specimens that lay around, the dogs, this, that, cats, bisons, cattle, everything. I think that's the kind of thing. We have to just shut the whole thing and ape our young people. I think then the earth is safe, the destination is safe, we are safe. I mean, today, there are a lot of people who belong to my generation would eat something, popcorn, and then the car, while they are traveling, the glass would come down, they'll throw the plastic outside the door. You must see if there are a couple of young people, even a 5-year-old child, 6, 10, they will scream because for them it is a taboo to throw that paper out. Uncle, and when we are there at the destination, don't just look at monuments. There is a lot of experiences a destination can do, which can be helpful to the local community. We need to see whether we can offer something to the local community. For instance, think of India, one day we say no to all these aerated things, including beer, and take to fresh fruit juices like palm, like coconut, or an orange, or something. Think of the farmers' revenue that day. I think we need to start looking at it. Can we sponsor local giveaways, local mementos, local food, fresh. I mean, it is awesome. But we are yet to taste that. If you taste it, you will keep going for it. There are people who travel 50 to 60 kilometers to eat something very beautiful in a village, but they have not started. I think we need to believe in what is local and start looking at it with a lot of love, with a lot of care and appreciation. I think all this will confine to being responsible, and this would automatically regenerate the village. And then we don't need any other concerns about this country. We don't need anybody's help. The country will just flourish. Take, for instance, destinations where I have my hotels. There is no beggary. They're the cleanest towns in India. There is no Spanx demand for anything. Maintained beautifully the tourist destinations, well informed. 100% solid waste is being treated. Electricity costs 13 paise less as compared to the rest of the country. The cleanest railway station. In fact, we have 57 air-conditioned bus stops with ATMs attached within that town. No other town or a village or a state has air-conditioned bus stop. So this is the way regenerative and responsible tourism can change. We don't need anybody's money. What we spend, if we spend responsibly, then everything will happen. The farmer is not wanting you to be sympathetic towards him, and he is not expecting you to do social work. The people in the village are not. They're just asking you to patronize their product. If they are making a kind of a fabric, buy that. Use it. Why import the fabric? Right? I'm not saying don't go abroad, don't use anything foreign. This is not freedom struggle. No. When you are there, patronize that. It's a beautiful country with beautiful products. We're able to say that, for instance, when some people go to Rajasthan, now things have changed. They just say, wow, so pretty. It's got camel prints. Can I have that? And we try to be more foreigners. No. No, don't do it for fashion's sake. Do it for the authenticity's sake. Then you'll find everything changing and changing very fast, and we will be a country that we should be, a proud nation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tavare, your thoughts from the farmer's perspective.
I think to support the regenerative way of tourism, the traveler when he goes to the agri-tourism in villages, he should live like a farmer. He should, eat like a farmer. He should work like a farmer. For 2 days, whatever two days is staying there, he should be a local. He should eat local. He should work local. He should enjoy the farms. See the crops, everything. Because in our place at Baramati, I think Baramati agri-tourism is walking, talking university of regenerative tourism. Why I'm saying this? Because if you see that we don't have artificial lawns, we don't have, we don't stage manage anything for the tourists. Whatever it is there in the farm, whatever there is in the villages, people come and see as it is. There is no people called for dancers and folk songs and folk dances. We don't do that. If anybody wants to see the potter's life, they go to the potter's house, potter's village there, and they see that. So as we say, we don't stage manage anything for the tourists. As and when, whichever seasons they comes, as it has been focused or it has been showcased to the tourists. If you see the infrastructure of our agri-tourism farm there, we don't have roofs to the bathrooms. It is open to the sky bathrooms because we don't require electricity in the daytime. We don't require fans. We don't require air conditions. All the rooms we have a transparent, one roof, one seat of the roof is transparent. We don't require light in the daytime activities. So there is no artificial swimming pool. There is nothing artificial there. When everything, as I said, it is like giving authentic experience to the tourist as it is, and as because we as a farmers, because government of India is talking about doubling a farmer's income by 2025. So we as a model of Maharashtra agri-tourism, it can be replicated to all over India, including Madhya Pradesh, because Madhya Pradesh is known for the wheat, Lokan, Madhya Pradesh MP Lokan wheat. So it can be a wheat festival throughout Madhya Pradesh, having about agri-tourism, including farmers of Madhya Pradesh.
Thank you, sir. Ali, from a hotelier's perspective, just as an example, it is said that in our daily lives, we use about 14 liters of water, whereas when we go to a hotel, it's almost 1,000 liters of water per day. So what are your thoughts? What are you doing in order to bring about more sustainable practices in the travelers that you see at your location?
So, I mean, most of the people who come to us are interested in nature-based tourism or wildlife tourism. So I think the model we've worked out also now with a new lodge which has come up in the Bori Wildlife Sanctuary is to promote slow tourism. Instead of spending 2 or 3 days in a destination, we thought, why not spend and immerse yourself in a destination for 1 whole week. That way you're traveling less, you are having a whole range of activities, whether it's walking, canoeing, camping, a choice of 2 lodges which you can transport through the landscape itself. And that is something which enables people to experience in a better way. You might experience only one landscape, but you will immerse in it. And obviously then people would like to see the local culture, also experience local experiences, buy souvenirs also which maybe the locals have made, so that there's a alternate income for the people who are living around us. And apart from what we do, to travel responsibly, I think it's also good to select new destinations. Obviously, most of the inbound tourism in India has been Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, but selecting new destinations will make more benefits to people who are there, and will also serve in giving you authentic experiences. Plus, finally, I think it's also important for travelers to select lodge operators who are more responsible. And a very good way of identifying that is, certification processes. Organization like Tough Tigers and all are doing that. And I hope the government also comes up with that criteria, as I was talking earlier. So once you have certification and levels of certification, then guests can select, and the different levels of certification obviously prove that your sustainability standards are higher or lower, and that can sort of help the guest distinguish who they should select. So I think these are some of the points that I thought of.
Thank you, Ali. Suyash, what would you tell the youth who are watching today about some very small everyday tips? What would be your take on this?
I think that's a very important question, and the youth of our world, I think we think in very big terms. We go on social media and say everyone should become vegan, everyone should clean up the beach, everyone should take 1-minute showers, everyone should do this. I think we're too aggressive. We're too aggressive at talking to our peers. We're too aggressive in trying to convince that this is the only way to change the world. I like to have a very minimalistic approach and a very small approach. When you're trying to tell someone to convert into veganism, you are trying to tell them to completely change their lifestyle in case they already eat non-veg, or maybe they even consume milk. You're telling them to change their complete habit within a day. That's impossible, right? For most people, that's impossible. For most people, they don't even have the courage to do it. If you're telling someone who has never picked up a piece of trash to go out and clean drains and clean beaches and clean the banks of Yamuna, which are very disgusting, but instead, why don't you ask them, pick up 1 piece of trash a day? Okay, make it 2 pieces of trash a day. If 1 million people pick up 1 piece of trash a day, That's better than one person trying to clean the beach. Just one piece of trash. That's what you have to do. Fine, if it can't turn vegan, become vegetarian for maybe 4 or 5 days in a week or 2 days in a week. Start with one day. Start small, but start somewhere. I think we are too aggressive in our approach, and with being too aggressive in our approach, we fail very fast. That's not the right way to think, I think. And we must start small. I think we also tend to find a way to always blame others, and say, okay, the government is not doing, the lodge staff is not doing, or the lodges aren't doing, or the other tourists aren't doing, or the international organizations aren't doing enough. But just stop that for a minute, stop criticizing everyone, and then just say, okay, everyone must be doing enough for their own ways. Let me do more. Okay, ask your peers kindly. I think kindness wins a lot of hearts, and we don't practice it enough. I think especially us youth, we are very quick to take to social media and write nasty comments about each other, especially when it comes to any debate and political topic, which environment is now a political topic, and people shaming each other. I think we need to be a little more kind, and we need to start small. So if you're taking a shower tomorrow, decrease it by 1 minute. If you're walking on the street tomorrow, pick up one piece of bottle. If you are eating non-veg, leave it for one day, and then slowly change. If 1 million people do it, 10 million people do it, that's going to make the impact.
Start small, but start somewhere. I think that kind of exemplifies what you've been trying to say. Mr. Shiv Shekhar Shukla, do you want to add something to this, sir, from your own personal experience?
I think Suyash has said it all, and that's the way forward, and that's the way we should look at things. And my take is that instead of preaching the word, that how to really make it a better place, we should look at ourselves and start doing small things. We should deliberately, and we should see that we should calibrate ourselves every day, that how much carbon footprints we have reduced by our own actions. Whether it is by consuming lesser of a natural resource, or by walking more than taking a vehicle, whatever small way we can think of in our everyday life. If all of us start doing these small things, and whether we are in travel industry or in IT industry, or we are in business or whatever, but we have to look at ourselves. We have to make a beginning from our own efforts, and those small steps will lead to a giant leap. That's it.
Thank you, sir. We are almost running out of time, and we are getting a lot of questions from our audience. So I've just picked a few. There's one question which I think Dr. Goodwin would be the best person to answer. Rahul Rawat asked, and I'm quoting verbatim here, how is regenerative tourism different from responsible tourism or sustainable tourism? Dr. Goodwin, if you can take that question, please.
Sure, I don't think it is. Responsible tourism is a very broad church, and regenerative tourism is one form of it. In the Cape Town Declaration back in 2002, one of the things we said was that really travel and tourism needs to put back into local economies, needs to help regenerate them, it needs to put back into cultural conservation and into wildlife conservation. It's implicit in the whole idea. The reason why responsible tourism is important is, as Mr. Shukla was just saying, it is a matter of what people do, and there's too much talk about what other people should do and too little focus on what people are doing themselves, the responsibility that they're willing to take, which I think has been a theme from each of the speakers. But I would say, Mr. Shukla, that it does seem to me that one of the problems for the good businesses is that they get undercut by the bad. And at some point, governments need to enforce minimum standards across the industry, because otherwise the good guys can't make a living, can't replace the bad, and we need to drive out the bad. And for that, sadly, we need government action. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. Mr. Shiv Shekhar Shukla, sir, this question is coming from Chirantan Dhamelia, and he asks, what steps is the Madhya Pradesh government taking next in terms of developing tourism, And I will also add another question from Nishant Upadhyay, which is in a similar vein, where he asks what kind of efforts are being taken to ensure parallel conservation of tribal cultural heritage with natural heritage conservation in the protected parks and areas. Sir, over to you.
Vanita, we boast of being one of those states which has got the largest forest cover, and we boast of ourselves to be a tiger state, a leopard state, and also now alligator state. We have the highest number of these animals in our state, and it has all happened not in one day, hundreds of years of effort. And now, after the governments came into being, government has been very proactively, saving its forest covers and trying to increase. In fact, in some pockets, our forest cover has increased. So nature is one USP of Madhya Pradesh, and so is the tribal population we have. We have a lot of diversity among the tribal population. There are Baigas, Bharias, Bhils, Gonds, Kols, Korkus, and they are dotted all throughout the state. And all of them have their own distinct heredity, their lifestyles, culture, their own socio-economic structures, languages, speech, so much of diversity within a state. So we are trying to merge tourism with the cultural aspects of the state, and we want to showcase Madhya Pradesh as a great cultural hub of the nation. It's a microcosm of the whole country shown in one place in Madhya Pradesh. And we want to create travel trails within the state where people can go to these travel areas, experience their way of living, enjoy their culture, local art, the craft and the cuisine, etc. We are promoting rural homestays in the travel areas in a big way. We are aiming at creating at least 1,000 homestays in less than 2 years' time in a very big mega project under the state. And so these are the things which we are trying to pull together, where nature with culture and the diversity of the state are showcased to the tourists from all over the world. Let them come and enjoy the kind of diversity we have in Madhya Pradesh.
Thank you, sir. We've come close to our 1.5 hours of panel discussion time. So just in summary, to say clearly, regenerative tourism is not a new term. Rather, tourism is part of a larger regenerative movement across the world. We are returning to connections with each other, with community and nature, all of which we have appreciated more during the pandemic. In short, the movement is there, the desire is there, the need is there, and the opportunity is there for tourism to contribute to local and national well-being and prosperity. On behalf of Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board, I wish to thank all of our speakers for their wonderful insights on regenerative tourism. I think on behalf of Sir Mr. Shivshekhar Shukla as well, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Goodwin, to Mr. Borgia, to Mr. Tavade, Ali and Suyash. Thank you so much. And a very special thanks to all of those who are attending this webinar. If you've joined us via YouTube or through registration, thank you so much. And on World Environment Day, let us remember that we may have a plan B to save tourism, but there is no fallback plan for Mother Earth. We have no planet B. Let us all pledge to do our bit to protect this beautiful planet we call home. Thank you, and signing off. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.